Welcome to The Other Side of Medicine, a trusted source for education, not medication, for 35 years. In every episode of The Other Side of Medicine, we deliver health information your doctor won't tell you about. My guests are the nation's leading health experts in science-based natural medicine, physicians, authors, researchers, and clinicians. We believe natural medicine should be first, drugs and surgery last, and so we promise to deliver you the next generation of health information built on three principles: common sense, science, and cooperation with nature. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to The Other Side of Medicine. I am your host, Dr. Kristosik, and you are listening to the podcast that helps you to live independently healthy. And tonight, I'll be talking about something that I think a lot of people will be interested in. So if you are constantly tired, you have a foggy head, or you're dragging without energy throughout the day, it might not be stress and lack of sleep. The real problem could be what's happening inside your gut. And in this episode of The Other Side of Medicine, I'm going to uncover science, like I usually do, evidence-based natural medicine. I'm going to talk about how food impacts not only your gut health, but how the connection between your energy and your brain clarity and your daily performance is linked to your gut. Now, in our last episode, we talked about anxiety and depression and how that is affected by what's happening inside the gut. And so there's going to be a little bit of crossover of what we'll be talking about tonight with last week's episode. However, the information that we'll be sharing will be new because there is things that affect our gut and our brain connection. And we have mood changes and behavior changes, but we also have things like chronic fatigue, which a lot of people are suffering with. A lot of people are suffering with chronic condition called chronic fatigue, and that's not good. So millions of Americans are suffering, first of all, with digestive disorders, over 100 million Americans. And those symptoms are often silent. You know, they're showing up with things like brain fog and chronic fatigue, and people don't associate it with gut problems. They think, oh, maybe it's because they're not getting enough sleep, or they've been overworked. Maybe, well, they don't associate it with their gut. Well, tonight we're going to be talking about that your gut, it's not just about digestion. It's your body's command center for immunity. The immune system is focused, 70% of the immune system is inside your gut. And your mood and your energy regulation. The energy regulation inside your body is connected to your gut. You know, the gut has its own nervous system, and it's called the enteric nervous system. And the brain is often, the gut actually is often called the second brain inside the body. It communicates directly with your brain. The gut communicates directly with your brain through that vagus nerve and that gut-brain axis. It's a real-time messaging system, and it involves nerves and hormones and the immune system as well. The immune system signals the brain as well. So if you're eating the wrong foods, which millions of Americans are addicted to junk food, the standard American diet, we call it SAD. Standard American diet is loaded with ultra-processed foods. You know, they're loaded with sugar and they're chemically laced. And, you know, that's not just hurting your waistline. People are always worried about their waistline. That's important, you know, because as we talked about in previous episodes, fat that's accumulates around the abdomen is the worst because that fat also accumulates around your organs, your internal organs. And so that's not a good place to have fat. But the problems with all the bad food that Americans are eating and all the chemicals that are in it, damages the lining of the gut. We have what's called the leaky gut. And that leaky gut, it also affects your microbiome, the microbes living inside of your gut. And it triggers inflammation. And that travels up into your brain. So you really want to make sure that you're conscious of what you're eating every single day. It's going to either fuel mental clarity and energy, or it's going to drain you, cause brain fog. So you can reverse these damages that all the junk food and the damage to the lining of the gut occurs by eating the right food, healing your gut, reclaiming your brain function and your energy. You don't have to live with fatigue. So first of all, the food and the fatigue connection is really profound. Let's talk about carbs, because that's a subject that's very dear to me. Carbs, many Americans are afraid of them because they've been told by experts, people on the internet and people who have written books, that carbs are dangerous to our body. People have been eating carbs for thousands of years and have been extraordinarily healthy. We talked last week about the blue zone, people living in the blue zones, their diet, the Mediterranean diet. We often hear about that because one of the blue zones is people who are living in Greece, and the people in Greece and the people in Costa Rica and the people in Loma Linda, California, and the people living in other parts of the blue zone eat a lot of carbs, like Okinawa, and they eating brown rice there. So you don't have to worry about eating carbs. It's the carbs that are refined that are the problem. And when you eat the wrong kind of carbs, those refined carbs, it causes blood sugar levels to spike. So your blood sugar levels for initially will go up, and then they'll plummet and they crash. So they spike at first and then they crash. And when you have that up and down with your blood sugar levels, then you have these dips in your blood sugar. Your body's going to get robbed of its energy. You're going to have fatigue. You're going to have, brain fog. So, did you ever notice a wave of exhaustion after you eat your lunch? People often eat and they'll start getting tired and want to fall asleep. Well, that's not normal. That's what we call metabolic dysfunction. And research that was published in a journal called Nutrients back in 2020, they showed that high glycemic diets, these are foods that are high in sugars, and they cause this spike and this plummet of the blood sugar. These are called high glycemic foods. Well, these kind of diets are linked to greater fatigue, irritability, and reduced cognitive function, the ability to make good decisions, the ability to think properly. And that was shown in that journal. And so that was back in 2020. There's a lot of research that shows that those refined carbohydrates are really, really the problem. It's not the carbs. If you're eating whole grains, you're eating beans and legumes and nuts and seeds and fruits and vegetables and leafy greens and healthy fats that come from cold water fish and fermented vegetables, well, you're going to have, those are what we call low glycemic foods. They keep your blood sugar nice and level throughout the day. And that's what you want, so you don't get tired, you don't get sleepy after a meal. So when your gut bacteria, they digest the fiber that's in those low glycemic foods, and they create what's called short chain fatty acids, like butyrate. And butyrate is a very powerful, it's a natural compound that decreases inflammation, helps to repair the lining of the gut, and so many other things. And these type of anti-inflammatory foods, like the ones that are the low glycemic foods, they boost what's called the mitochondria. The mitochondria are the energy-producing cells inside the body, and they keep your energy levels up because they're the energy engines of the body. And a study back in what's called Cell Metabolism back in 2016, they found a link between butyrate, that compound that is made from short-chain fatty acids, with better brain performance and better mood as well. So your mitochondria, they power every cell inside your brain and inside your entire body. When you damage the mitochondria, you have poor energy output, and then you're going to end up with chronic fatigue. So ultra-processed foods, they clog up the system, while colorful vegetables, fruits, and omega-3 foods like cold water fish and probiotics that are found in the fermented foods keep things running smoothly, and that's what you want. Oh, by the way, magnesium. I don't want to forget about talking about that. That's another one. Magnesium, and many people are deficient in it, is another common root cause of fatigue because it affects the glucose metabolism. And it helps to balance the neurotransmitters inside the body, the nervous system, and keeping things running smoothly. And most people are deficient in magnesium. Well, the solution, well, first of all, food's the best medicine. So pumpkin seeds, almonds, spinach, and supplements like magnesium glycinate. That's one of my favorites. It's because it's really very highly absorbable, and it doesn't cause you to have too much of a nutrient like magnesium at the wrong time. So it kind of evenly distributes the magnesium through your body. Now, here's another tip. And I've talked about this before, but for those of you who have not heard, taking magnesium citrate, especially taking it about 30 minutes before you go to bed, will help you to sleep like a baby. It'll help you sleep like a rock. And you don't want to take it during the day. You want to take it about 30 minutes before you go to bed. And that's going to keep things running smoothly during the day, and it'll put you to sleep again at night. So if you have lack of sleep, you're going to have lack of energy through the day. So you need a good night's sleep, not only for sleep, but for helping to keep your immune system strong, and your body repairs damaged cells and damaged parts of the body at night through what's called autophagy. So you want to keep running with your body's systems like autophagy to repair damaged cells. Because your body heals itself and repairs itself if you work with it. Most people aren't, though. They're trying to get energy throughout the day by drinking coffee. Now, caffeine in coffee will give you some energy, and a lot of people rely on that because it not only gives you a spike of energy, but then you got to keep on drinking coffee throughout the day. A lot of people rely on the caffeine in coffee because it acts as a laxative, but they're still toxic in their colons because they have these poor gut microbiomes, the wrong bacteria living there. So you want to make sure that you're not relying on coffee and the caffeine in it to give you energy. You don't need to have coffee to give you energy. You don't need to have coffee to act as a laxative. I haven't drank a cup of coffee in probably 50 years, and I have more energy than China has rice. So, caffeine, it taxes the adrenal glands, and it disrupts your sleep patterns too. So it compounds the fatigue. So maybe if you want to have some coffee, you really like it, maybe just have a cup, just one cup, and drink ginger tea and turmeric tea and chamomile tea and other herbal teas that are really powerful agents to help to provide repair to all the cells of the body. Now, another thing is dehydration masquerades as fatigue. A lot of people lack water. Your brain is 75% water. Now, my recommendation is drinking half of your weight in ounces of water. Half of your weight in ounces of water. So They found with research studies that even a 2% drop in the fluid inside of your body can impair memory, focus, and your moods. So start each day with a large glass of water and get some electrolytes. And if you sweat a lot, or you drink coffee, make sure you're getting those electrolytes, extra electrolytes. You can get some water that actually has electrolytes in it. So sleep and gut health are linked. And junk food disrupts that. According to an article in the journal called Frontiers in Psychiatry back in 2022, poor gut health correlates with insomnia. So you get a lack of sleep when you have poor gut health, which then worsens your brain, the brain fog and your fatigue. It's a vicious cycle. So fatigue isn't just about being tired. It's often the first sign of your gut and your brain are out of sync. And food is the switch that can turn off that connection or turn it back on. You want to turn it on, that connection between the gut and the brain. You want to keep that communication, going very well. So your gut is the home of over 100 trillion microbes, bacteria, and it has yeast and it has fungi, and it has even some parasites. And some of those things are what we call commensal. They actually work with the body, and you want to have a percentage of balance between 80% good and 20% bad. We don't know why the bad are there, but scientists have found that you should have that 80-20% balance. And a healthy microbiome, it makes sure that you have good digestion, good detoxification, and your neurotransmitters and your hormone production is going to be at excellent levels. So when people take antibiotics and are dished out like candy by their doctors, it disrupts that microbiome. Or sugar, too much sugar. It all causes crash in our energy levels, but it disrupts our microbiome. According to another article back in 2018 in the Nature Reviews of Microbiology, a diverse microbiome, the bacteria living inside your gut, when there's many different varieties of bacteria and viruses and yeast and fungi, it can help to protect against depression and fatigue. So diversity, where does that come from? Well, it comes from fermented foods, fresh fruits and vegetables, and a variety of whole grains and beans and nuts and seeds, because the bacteria in the gut, they love the fiber in those foods. And so you want to eat those foods that have high fiber. And also you want to have what's called resistant starches. Those resistant starches come from foods that are cooked, then refrigerated, and then reheated. It's called a resistant starch, and you can get benefit from that. And then there's a protein that our body manufactures inside the gut. It's called zonulin. And zonulin is a protein that regulates the gut permeability. Now, the permeability is the gut lining. The lining of the gut allows nutrients to flow in and waste matter to not get in. You don't want to have toxic waste matter getting inside the gut. And so you got to protect that. And zinc carnosine protects it. So it keeps the bad guys out and lets the good guys come into the bloodstream. Now, there was a study back in the Physiological Reviews journal back in 2012, and it showed that gluten and infections increase zonulin levels. It increases the opening up of the gut lining, and it causes inflammatory molecules to get inside the gut. Zinc carnosine is a nutrient that protects the lining of the gut. And I said earlier that it was zonulin. Well, zonulin actually damages the lining of the gut, and it causes inflammatory molecules to enter into the bloodstream. The zinc carnosine, it helps to heal the lining of the gut. So that we call that, again, that's called leaky gut. And when you have that breakdown of the barrier of the gut lining caused from zonulin, then you have the immune system reactions and they skyrocket. And you get allergic responses and hidden food allergies and all the plethora of illnesses and diseases, actually, including autoimmune diseases that are triggered from a leaky gut. You get the brain fog, you get the joint pain, you get exhaustion, all that follows. And then, of course, the other thing that damages the lining of the gut is processed foods, as we talked about earlier, and non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. So the non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs are damaging to the gut. And alcohol and stress, they all damage the lining of the gut. So you want to heal that lining. So start with using supplements like zinc carnosine. And my favorite herb for it is slippery elm. And using things like aloe vera gel. They all help to heal the lining of the gut. So gut bacteria, they also produce about 90% of your body's serotonin and 50% of your body's dopamine. The bugs in your gut are affecting your mood and your motivation and your clarity from these hormones. So when you feed them probiotics from things like fermented foods and prebiotics, these are the foods that the bacteria love, like garlic and onions and asparagus and green bananas. Yeah, green bananas actually are very beneficial prebiotic that the bacteria love. So there was actually a landmark study back in 2020 in the Psychopharmacology Journal. They showed that probiotic supplementation improved fatigue and brain function. And in people with chronic fatigue syndrome, they were actually improved by getting probiotics. And where do you get probiotics from? Well, fermented foods like kimchi and sauerkraut, dill pickles, and the non-dairy yogurt, which is my favorite, with no sugar in it. And these are in kombucha, that's another one. And these are called the fermented foods, and they give you probiotics. That's what you want. And again, the journal found that people who were getting these probiotics had a decrease in all those symptoms. Now, constipation is another problem. It's not just an inconvenient problem that a lot of people suffer with. It actually causes toxins to be reabsorbed back into the bloodstream. Instead of being excreted, eliminated, they are actually being reabsorbed, these toxins. And that also, constipation burdens your liver and it burdens your brain function. So how do you prevent constipation? Well, you get the fiber foods. You get good hydration, making sure you're getting half your weight in ounces of water. And you're taking things like magnesium, because that'll help as well. These are all solutions. So, my friends, all of these things that we're talking with you tonight about, they'll heal your gut. They're the foundation of mental clarity and continuous energy throughout the day. So you want to make sure that you repair the damage of the lining of the gut and you get rid of food sensitivities, the hidden food allergies. And we'll be talking a lot about that in upcoming episodes of The Other Side of Medicine. So I would encourage you to come back again next week. We're going to have a guest. I thought it was going to be this week, but we'll have a physician on talking about the connection between exercise and the function of the gut and microbiome. So we'll be talking about that. So don't miss the episode next Thursday. So until next week, my friends, take care. And here's to your